get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say
this is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes in
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Welcome to In the Clouds. I am your host, Stu Miniman. It is Thursday, April 6th. Spring is hitting in the northern hemisphere. Yesterday, it was really cold in the Boston area. Today, it's going to be pretty warm. But there's so much going on in this space. Before I introduce our guest here, I just want to quick mention a couple of big events happening in the cloud world. First of all, in about a week and a half time, the KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, will have their European show in Amsterdam. I am super excited for that one. I was all ready to go in 2020, and now here we are in 2023, and we finally get to do KubeCon Amsterdam. Going to put in the chat. I actually got a chance to do a preview video to talk about all the themes, the topics that are happening in the cloud native ecosystem. So my former boss from theCUBE, Dave Vellante, myself, and Rob Strechay, who I've known for many years, talked about everything from platform engineering and WASM and all the cool things happening. So if you have a few minutes, check out the link that we will post in the chat here. I will be there in person. If you're not going in person, some of the things are virtual, as well as there is an OpenShift Commons, which I highly recommend. Got some phenomenal customers that will be sharing their stories. There's Ministry of France, ING, which is a big bank, also sharing them. So really looking forward. Like 8,000 to 10,000 people will be there. And then, boy, we get back from that in I believe third week of May we will have Red Hat Summit, which is in my backyard here in Boston, Massachusetts. There will also be an OpenShift Commons on that. So if you just go to commons.openshift.org, you can find out about all the events. Most of those, there's a virtual option, and we make lots of the content available. So yeah, a little bit of events coming up. I have less travel than I used to, but still looking to do a bunch of these events, these live streams. And speaking of lots of travel and what's going on in the cloud, I'm super excited to welcome our guest for the show this week, Andi Mann. He is the global CTO and co-founder of Sageable, a consulting in this space. I've known Andi since the really early days of us talking about cloud computing. He and I both changed jobs a couple of times since then, but always someone that I love having a conversation with, talking about the realities of what's happening on. We both had lots of our time helping customers work through these journeys and transformation. So, Andi, it's so great to see you. Glad we can finally, get this one get kicked off. And thanks so much for joining us.
Stu, it is so good to see you. You look happy, healthy, and well, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. All right. So, Andi, I gave a little bit of a tee up, but if you could give us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about Sageable.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, look, early career was actually IT ops. I was at the coalface working in IT ops, data centers, big banks, insurance, stuff like that, right? That's where I got my passion for a lot of things, not least automation. Sitting at coalface, doing all that work, all the mundane routine stuff, love automation. In the end, that drew me into things like virtualization. I worked with a small analyst firm. I think that's where we first met, when I was at Enterprise Management Associates as an industry analyst, covering things like virtualization, cloud, and DevOps. Subsequently, CA Technologies in product in the office of the CTO. Splunk as well, 6 years there, working on innovation programs of messaging, new business, partnerships, really exciting stuff. Most recently, I was CTO at a video company, enterprise video software in the cloud called Kumu, Q-U-M-U. Acquired in January, and now I am running my business, Sageable, advisory and consulting services for digital transformation.
Awesome. Yeah, Andi, wow, that was 6 years at Splunk. It felt like a blink of an eye. I remember talking to you before you joined that. We talked to you a bunch of times when you were there. We had a couple of shared friends that were there. As Yeah, I mentioned my old boss Dave Vellante used to joke in this industry. There's really only about 100 of us in 99 seats, and we just go round and round. And every once in a while, the music stops and everybody grabs a chair for a bit.
Oh,
So
that is so true.
yeah,
In Australia, there's only like 3 countries, so big companies.
Absolutely right. Wait, Australia. I've got a guy on my team. I'm sure you know him and everything. Like that. Yeah, we do have. It's funny. Even we had a customer come in from Canada, and right, a guy on my team was like, "No, I know him because in our space we do tend to cross paths." So, boy, Andy, we could spend the entire time just talking about some of the things that you teed up in your intro there. You like automation, what's the role of ops? I definitely want to get into some of those, but let's just step back for a second today. Here we are, it's 2023. We've been doing cloud for a while now. Usually we say, the low-hanging easy stuff has been done. Last couple of years, it's been like, hey, what will the next million cloud customers look like? And you look, Amazon has gone through certain transitions. They have a new CEO and feels like they are slightly different. I say with, only slightly tongue in cheek, maybe we are past day one when it comes to the cloud, even though, of course, the Amazon mantra is always day one. So what's your view, Andy? Where are we with the cloud today? What are some of kind of the big opportunities and challenges that people are facing today?
Yeah, I think with the cloud computing today, a lot of people to start with are not even there. You look at research and everyone's got some level of cloud investment. A lot of it's software as a service because obviously SaaS adoption very easy. Swap out your non-core stuff with someone else doing that work. That's always an awesome approach. I think there's a number of organizations who have done lift and shift, and we've talked about that before, the idea of picking up what you're doing now and just dropping it exactly the same into a cloud platform. You're not going to get all the benefits of cloud computing out there, which is part of the reason I think we're hearing a lot of murmuring about repatriation at the moment, this idea of going back on-prem. I don't think it's a highly, a big thing that people are doing. We're not going to move entirely away from cloud. But I do believe that we're going to go into this very vast and exceedingly hybrid world. I've always believed in the pragmatic approach to cloud computing. And part of that is choosing the right platform at the right time for the right deployment, the right system. And so I think as we move forward, diversity in platform is going to become more apparent. It's not going to be, I don't think, the ability to move between clouds rapidly. That's not the hybrid cloud I foresee. Lock-in is lock-in, and it always has been. And I think cloud is, to a large degree, a different kind of lock-in. You're using AWS's APIs, you're using GCP's APIs, you're writing to those. Most people aren't writing stubs so that they can move that stuff around. So we're going to see a lot of businesses committed to specific clouds, but clouds, there'll be more than 3, by the way. Industry clouds, vertical clouds, I think are going to be really important. We're seeing that, some of that in government with JEDI. This idea of having a cloud that's specific around privacy, data control, stuff like that. I believe that we'll see much more specificity in the cloud providers' offerings to attract different kinds of audiences. So we'll see multiple clouds, somewhat integrated, maybe continuing on-prem, but very specialized in certain areas, especially around certain verticals, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, Andy, and yeah, I agree a lot. First of all, there was kind of this misconception out there that like, oh, hey, I'm just going to go move to the cloud. Let me throw some money, and some people at it, and in a couple of months, poof, we are now modernized. We know, as you said, number one, it's a journey. Number two, you're really never done. You might reach the end of a certain phase or get things where you think you're relatively there. But, I love to quote Clayton Christensen. Clayton Christensen is like, strategy is not something that you like put into concrete. It's something that directionally you set and like you need to revisit every quarter. So things change. To your point, like lift and shift, like I still get like, it pains me when I hear lift and shift. Because if you understand the architecture and the economics of cloud, if I do what I was doing in my data center and I just move that to the cloud, over time, it's actually going to be more expensive, be more work. And it's, there's a reason why the economics of cloud make sense, but it should be, I want to take advantage of flexibility. There's certain services I want to be able to leverage. And to your point also about like lock-in, if I'm just using the bare minimum features of cloud so that I can move anywhere, you might as well use the cheapest cloud possible, not the one that has all the features, because it's the innovation, it's the agility. Those are the things you want to take advantage of. So look, I mean, you're preaching to the choir, talking to somebody that works at Red Hat. Our whole mission is like, open hybrid cloud. We want flexibility. We want consistency. We want to help customers wherever you are, and that's going to be lots of places. But yeah, I guess the next thing, you started to lay out that if we think about cloud, 10 years ago, if you said like how many things are going to be in the cloud and how many clouds will there be, it was a bit foggy. If I look today, as you said, like cloud is not a thing. It's, I have, certain things that run in the primary cloud and certain things that run in like Equinix sitting next to it. And maybe if I'm government or have certain compliance things, Azure and Amazon, everybody has their own separate cloud that is still part of it, but it's the gov cloud. So Andi, you've been part, I've seen presentations, we titled this Cloud Outlook 2030. So, as much as we can have a crystal ball, paint us a picture for where do you see, looking at 2030, what are the big differences that we're going to see as we think about cloud computing compared to the almost basic version today, which is like, I have my data center and I have public cloud type of environment.
Gee, I mean, I've always thought predictions are a mug's game. No one's got a good crystal ball as far as I'm aware. But look, I'll tell you what I think is what I'm seeing and where I think that goes. One area I think that we'll see significant movement is around accountability. We see a lot of third-party data loss happen. Oh, not a lot, but enough to make the front page of various journals. And through software supply chain type of issues, we see, and I know when I was a CTO at Kumu, every single RFP would come through and say, tell me about your software supply chain. My customers wanted to know who I was using. And I think in cloud computing, there's been a certain lack of accountability based on the concept, I'm just giving you a platform, everything else is your problem. That's sort of where we used to be with software as well. It's like, I've got software, you use it, it's up to you now. But we moved to cloud computing and services rather than products. And so providing a cloud computing service actually comes with its own responsibilities and accountabilities. And so if you're a cloud computing provider and you open up for some kind of breach, then that historically would be, the person using the cloud would have to have contingency. We talk about, you should be in another zone, you should be multi-zone, you should have a failover. You should have built your microservices in ways that they'll fail over, not monolithic. Now, I think that going forward, we're going to see more accountability around security and data. Where is your data? Obviously, with Safe Harbor and GDPR, RIP, the idea of knowing where your data is, having localized zones, this has been very important already. I think that kind of idea is going to expand. So we're going to look at better security, better availability, of course, as well, because of localization. But around that sustainability, around governance, some of these non-revenue values, the privacy values, the safety values, the ESG values, the enterprise sustainability and governance values. And so we're going to, in my mind, see more offerings from different cloud providers that help to fill those gaps. It's not like everyone wants to have a very specific and highly regulated cloud like the gov cloud you were talking about. It's not like old government agencies want to use the same gov cloud either. I think there will be more vertical specialization, more niche clouds for things like data privacy, for highly verticalized industries. Maybe there'll be a retail cloud. Maybe there'll be an automotive cloud. Very specific requirements for different kinds of industries and different kinds of verticals. And software often, over the last sort of 20, 30 years that I've existed in the industry, has often morphed into more specific and more niche cases that provide better value and better service to fewer people, because this is often how capitalism goes. I do think there's going to be a lot more financial management. We see a lot of focus right now on FinOps and stuff like that. Cloud cost observability is a term I've used and heard recently. So we're definitely coming out of the honeymoon, Stu. We're coming out of cloud is good no matter what. And we're moving into a much more pragmatic view. Some clouds are good for me, some are not. I want to use these ones, but not this one. I want better accountability for my data and governance. I want to be able to report to my board about my ESG values, about my energy utilization. This is becoming another important point for cloud acquisition. So I think there's going to be a lot more niche, non-revenue kind of drivers towards cloud offers and what they can do and how they can compete.
Yeah. Andy, so many things there. I definitely agree with you. In the earlier days of cloud, it was kind of like we threw a lot of stuff there. We didn't have necessarily the best tools to be able to understand if I'm getting the best value out of it. The clouds have matured, the ecosystem has matured around them. Sustainability, I sure hope you're right around that topic, Andy. So actually at KubeCon, Red Hat has a 5-minute keynote talking about sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability from a Red Hat standpoint, it's, do I have visibility into what is happening? Because just like on the financial things, I have some people on my team that's like, well, certain services I understand real well, and others I need to wait until I get the bill for the first time before I know whether or not did I architect it something weird, or is trying to read through some of the documentation about how you will actually be charged and can I measure that? Heck, you spent 6 years at Splunk. I need to tell you about logging and observability and all of that wonderful stuff. Speaking of which, I want to go back to, you talked, both you and I have a background in ops and data center. And for years, we've been talking now about, we want developer productivity. What's the role of infrastructure? I watched the serverless trend for a bunch of years. And at the end of the day, we still have, storage and networking still need to work. So Andy, there's been this buzz for like the last year of automation, but even more specifically like platform engineering. So I'll be sitting on a panel at KubeCon talking with a few of my peers in the industry about what we think, but would love to get your view on kind of automation, platform engineering. Is DevOps dead at this point, or that whole area?
Yeah, DevOps is absolutely dead. We totally failed, and we're going back to being DevOps together again.
Okay, I'm going to call Josh after this meeting, and he'll be knocking on your door in a few minutes. So
excellent. It's all over, baby. No. Look, DevOps has always been culturally directed. It will always exist because it's really always about collaboration for me. It's funny. Patrick Dubois, the godfather of DevOps, who I know I talked to him about this once when I was at CA. We were sponsoring DevOps Days at one point. And, CA, big company, and DevOps Days, lots of open source small vendors. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And Patrick walked around the expo floor. And he said to me, Andy, so what do all these products do to help you collaborate? And that was his question, right? DevOps was about collaboration. He would ask that of all the vendors. There was all this DevOps washing, like cloud washing we saw a while ago. And there's sort of observability washing going on right now. I read an article recently. And the idea that DevOps is about collaboration, communication, and integration between teams does not go away. What happens is it manifests in real ways. So we saw site reliability engineering. That was a manifestation of DevOps in the IT operations space. It was like, okay, let's take this idea and let's institutionalize it, let's professionalize it. So in dev, there's lots of areas where that's already happened, things like Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Safe, et cetera. In ops, it's like, well, I guess CI/CD, automated release was where we were at. I certainly worked at Splunk on things like collaborative incident management. So taking it from that end point of over the wall, sure, we're collaborating for release, but how many DevOps life cycles ended with release? Drove me crazy as an IT ops person, seeing all these flowcharts and all these guides And release was the exciting party day. And that's actually just the day when ops need to figure out how to run this stuff and read some docs and start to do configurations and tweakings and tunings. So, no, DevOps is not dead. We're moving into collaborative modes around collaborative security, collaborative incident response management. These ideas, platform engineering. I'm really interested in this. This is not new, but it is, right? I remember 30 odd years ago, I had wrote automation routines that I could just provision for a developer. That was easy though, because I had one system to deal with. Now you've got cloud and provisioning different kinds of systems. I've seen a lot of concern around developer productivity. And I mentioned FinOps before, the cost of software development life cycles and the inefficiencies that are growing in there. And so what I do see, a lot of inquiries that I'm getting right now around things like observability for software development and for reducing the cost by reducing the number of tools. So some of the value stream management tooling that I'm seeing, being able to look at, and again, this is something we did with Orange Business when I was at Splunk, was looking at all the data coming out of the dev tools and trying to figure out, well, do we need all these tools? Are they delivering value? So I think there's a movement, and part of it is this platform engineering to standardize, to, again, just to reduce waste. We know from Tom and Mary Poppendike the 7 wastes of software development, and one of them is context switching. And so moving between different tools and different type of environments while I'm developing, that's a context switch. That's a form of waste. So that's going to cost you time and money. I love the idea of platform engineering by being able to provide certain guardrails. And by the way, had a really good podcast myself recently with Krish from Red Hat. And he helped me understand some of this idea that a good platform built by IT ops so that you get a standardized development, test, and production environment at very slow, very, very low latency for stand-up, for provisioning, for re-provision, for deployment. I think this is very positive. It extends a lot of what IT operations and operations automation was already doing, which is automating that mundane routine stuff, standardizing where you can, and freeing yourself up to do that difficult human stuff around things like innovation and troubleshooting. So I think platform engineering is a really interesting space. I'm actually starting to cover it now with my consulting because I think it's the logical extension of DevOps, is moving to these areas of specialization where the core discipline bubbles back up into a very standardized and repeatable way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a challenge. The question is, how much can any one person do? It's, yes, we want to break down silos and have visibility. But if the developer is responsible for not only building it, but also running it, they might not want to be on the pager, all night on that. Oh, and, throw in there, the engineering architecture is also going to relate directly to the financial implications. Are there tools? Can observability help me give me visibility into some of these things? And I tell you, it's one of those places where things like the foundational models, and you look at GitHub Copilot. We have, Ansible Wisdom, or, everybody's favorite ChatGPT is going to give some pieces here where, I shouldn't need to know everything, but I should have some best practices that give like, hey, are you sure you want to architect it this way? Because, it could cost you some additional money, or maybe there's a slightly different way to do it. What we've all wanted to know in general, I think back in the VM days was, I want to understand what a bunch of my peers have done and what's the most efficient, how can I leverage, templates and the like. And it feels like a shift for me, Andy, in cloud, because I've been told the last 5 years, it's like, well, the wonderful thing about cloud is there's just hundreds of services and you can build what you need. And the enterprise typically has wanted to, yeah, I need to build some stuff, but really I want to consume. I would rather trade my dollars to be able to buy solutions and do the things that are important for my business versus like, oh my gosh, how many things do I have to figure out myself when if there's 1,000 other companies that are doing it, I should just be able to follow that template and do what they're doing. So yeah.
I love that concept. I mean, this is part of what I think the rise of things like community cloud are really going to be. And this idea of being able to share confidentially, and I think to the conference circuit, right? And you'll have seen this, and I know a lot of your viewers will. You go to a conference, an event, you sit down and you talk tech with people. And at some point, you might realize you're in the same business, the same vertical. Especially the more technical you are, for want of a better term, the less you care about the business, the more you want to just make the technology work well. And so you'll get IT leaders, you'll get developers, you'll get engineers sitting down, talking, swapping, changing problems to solutions together, user group style, right? Meetup style. And then, you don't talk about how you're innovating on your core banking application. But gee, you can talk with each other about how you're solving some of your standardized resourcing issues, how you're connecting storage together, what your architectures look like. A lot of this is not core competency. And a good chunk of this is why you want to use cloud computing. Focus on what is your core competency, that core banking application or whatever it might be. And work together, use that experience that already exists, use the existing knowledge. This is research I've done personally in the State of DevOps reports, the idea that sharing patterns improves the outcome. So sharing patterns, and by the way, the broader ecosystem you share your patterns in, the more the results are multiplied. So we see obviously people sharing patterns within departments. If I'm in the front end team, I share patterns. Systems, definitions, configurations, architectures. I share those things with my peers in my team. Of course I do. Over time, we found this a very small amount was happening, but the impact was outsized. If you share it across company boundaries, you also get really good results. In fact, better results. So this idea of community clouds where the non-mission critical stuff, the non-differentiated stuff is shared. That's used as a training ground for machine learning. It's used to make everyone better. The core competency and the innovation still happens. There's still differentiation. But I really think that that's an opportunity to really raise all boats in the harbor.
Yeah, and Andy, it's funny. It's one of the things that brought me to Red Hat is, I think back to when I first worked with Red Hat 20 years ago. Every bank that I talked to, you'd have to be under NDA to do anything, including we were architecting the storage for their email. And it's you kind of laugh these days and we're like, oh, okay. Trust me, I talked to a government agency in Europe that still manages their own email. And one of their biggest challenges is Microsoft doesn't want to support them anymore because everything needs to be O365 as opposed to today. I'll be at KubeCon in 2 weeks. There are hundreds of companies that are part of the CNCF sharing their architectures, their best practices. And heck, many of these companies are bringing projects. They're like, hey, we solved something and we'd love other people to use it and help contribute it. That's, open source is the default today for that very reason. And those banks, they meet down in New York City, a couple of times a year, and they commute together. They'll go beat on Cisco and some of the other vendors to fix some of the things they do. Now, sure, some of their proprietary architectures on how they get, a microsecond or nanosecond faster on trading, they don't share that. But some of the other things that they all need, they're working together. So I've loved that shift. It's gone from everything under NDA to most things we can do in the public and trade and share because many of these things are kind of baseline that our industry needs. So I love kind of the consortia or the, groups even in industries, which I think drives to what you were saying about community clouds. Do you have any other examples? I love the New York Stock Exchange was creating data products out of what they were doing there. I've worked with plenty of universities and hospitals that also create research across companies. We saw, especially during COVID, there was so much sharing that had to spin up fast. Any other kind of examples that you've got of this kind of trend towards community cloud?
Yeah, actually, one area which I live in Boulder, Colorado. It's not a big city. I'm 5 minutes bike ride from literally mooing at cows. And so a couple of mates of mine have gone from tech into ag. So ag tech. So there's this idea of, and a really good mate of mine is working on this as a software as a service. Farmers putting product to market. So I'm in Colorado, pretty big place, but not that big considering I come from Australia. So which market do I want to send my stuff to? So a lot of farmers will have predefined suppliers and buyers and stuff like that. But a lot of them will take either excess or regularly take their product to market, literally. Which market, which week has better prices? So there you go. There's a community cloud set up for ag tech and smaller farmers being able to maximize the value of their product by collaborating together, grouping their stuff, going to the place which has the highest prices that week because they've got real-time information that's available from around the region that's not any one person's information. It's information they all agreed to share. Farming's a bit different. You get commoditized pricing almost by definition. But that's one area I've seen. I'm really excited for that kind of thing, this idea of community cloud or industry cloud, by the way. James Urquhart, great guy, you know him. He corrected me on the internet, and I just want to point that out. Industry cloud was the NIST term for it. This is not a new concept, really. But I think government, retail, banking, logistic, telecoms. You think of cable, all of the work that goes on under the covers, a lot of it on shared infrastructure to start with, all those cable lines, right? So it's not like we never have done this before. I do see, I love that ag tech one because it's just helping real humans not get oppressed.
Yeah. Andy, it's you're giving me flashbacks. So all those, because when I hear community cloud, I think of those original NIST definitions, and while they were useful, there's certain things like I wrote an ebook 2 years ago about okay, here's what we thought hybrid cloud was going to look like 10 years ago, but as you said, hybrid cloud is not moving things all over the place because we've got these pesky laws of physics, and data has gravity and is really tough to do things with. And we don't wake up and be like, oh, hey, this cloud lowered their price by 5 cents. Now we should shift all of our workloads. Certain things I should be able to burst, and I should have, if I need to move or there are certain reasons, but portability still can be really tough. Hey, so you brought up with the ag tech. I'd love to, the shifting, job environment. So unfortunately, the big high-tech companies have, obviously done a lot of layoffs. There's a little bit of a depression. I wonder, ag tech, biotech, fintech, there's so many adjacent markets that leverage technology. And with the work from home capability in most companies, what are you seeing? What advice would you have for kind of peers out in the industry if, normally they're like, hey, I'd like to work for some, well-known Silicon Valley or cloud technology company. What else is out there? Where should they be looking?
Yeah, look, it always depends on where you are in your career. Individual is different, and where you are in your family and all sorts of stuff. But I'll tell you what, a couple of things I've seen. One is I have not seen a glut in skills, right? I look at some of the teams that got laid off at Alexa, the Amazon team, the Amazon Alexa, it's a loss leader, right? A lot of the metaverse team at Facebook. It's like, I'm working on research right now. VR, AR, metaverse is number 20 out of 20 technologies for a IT leader in digital transformation, right? It just doesn't exist. Metaverse, I read an article yesterday, 12% of millennials are engaged in metaverse technologies in any way, right? So there's this hype around the idea that because the big overhirers have done layoffs, that all of a sudden we've got a glut of tech professionals. What I'm seeing is a skills shortage. And all the reputable research that looks into skills and economy will back that up. There's actually a skills shortage still of technical professionals. Where the skills shortage is, unfortunately, is not in California, it's not in Silicon Valley, it's not in Seattle. Where the skills shortage is in Minneapolis, it's in Idaho, it's in Iowa, it's in Kansas City. I tell you, mate, if I was a younger person today, I would look for the new place that's coming. I would look for, I don't know if I'm getting these right, but a Rapid City, Look for a Missoula. These are some of the areas around the Rocky Mountain West that are really booming. And certain things in Boulder, in Colorado, Denver area, we've got lots of fiber that comes across the mountain, super geologically stable, grew up a storage industry as a result. There's other areas in this country which are booming and need those people, and you're not going to pay $3 million for a rundown studio in a bad neighborhood. You're going to be able to raise a family. I'm really excited by the opportunity to distribute people. I'm a big believer of work from home, work from wherever, whenever was our motto at Kumu. I personally sent my teams home, shut down offices, migrated to cloud, because I really believe in that flexibility and asynchronous work, the productivity you get from working in about a home environment, the ability to attract and retain diverse talent because you're accommodating individual difference in things like what hours are you working? Can you go pick up your kids from school? Can you take care of your sick grandmother a couple of times a day? These sorts of things. I think that creates opportunity for businesses outside of Silicon Valley to snap up some of these amazing professionals. And we both know so many amazing technology professionals. I think the opportunity for them right now is in insurance. It's those techs you talked about. It's fintech, it's insure tech, it's med tech, it's ag tech. Take some of this innovation, stop building social media platforms and start building stuff to get money into farmers' hands.
Yeah. Andy, how did you talk about all that stuff in Boulder and not say, and you work your work schedule around the hiking, biking, or other outdoor activity that you have to do? Because it was a requirement. A friend of mine, I was like, God, if I moved to Colorado, I would really I like to bike. I do some of these things. He's like, no, Stu, if you really wanted to do those things more, you would have already moved here to Colorado. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Love it.
It
I've
is
been a few
true.
times. It's so much fun.
I tell you, Stu, just quickly, one of the things that I did around that when I was in the middle of the pandemic, I actually unlocked my Strava. Strava is a digital platform recording bike rides and running and so. I unlocked that and opened it up to my team so they could see when I was going for a bike ride at 2:00 in the afternoon. Yep. That was work from wherever, whenever.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. I get, my Peloton ride usually in the morning. And if somebody books me for a 9:00 meeting, I'm still kind of dripping. So, but yeah, love it. Got to hook up with you on Strava. So Andy, I got one last question for you. So it was funny. I opened up ChatGPT on the side. I'm like, hey, who's Andy Mann and what's he known for? And he's like, Andy's a prolific writer and he's authored books and all this stuff there. And what, come on, Visible Ops Private Cloud, the innovative CIO, the new, it lists you as an author of the new Kingmaker, which I don't think is true because that's Stephen O'Grady. So, right, the warning on ChatGPT is the most human thing about ChatGPT, according to somebody I saw on Twitter, is it thinks it's smarter than it is. So, but it did say, you're a well-known executive. You've worked in digital transformation, IT ops, cloud computing. It was good. But here's the question I have, because I used to write a lot of blogs, Andy. I've written longer form. I'm glad some people watched online. We had a few comments, come in here and everything. But people's attention spans are so much shorter. Don't do the 30-minute video or even the 7-minute video. I need the 30-second to a minute video. Like a book? Are you kidding? I can't do a book. It needs to be, TikTok length or shorter and a couple of things. So how's the changing kind of media landscape impacted your content creation, your way of engaging with people? I mean, you and I think, are both of the belief that, hey, Twitter's not awesome these days. We're trying to help out and do things like on Mastodon. But you and I both engaged and know lots of people, and we're always looking. So I'd love kind of the media and community engagement. What's your thoughts on that these days?
Yeah, Stu, that's a really good point. Look, Twitter, oh my, what an interesting place and also what a mess. I've met and made amazing relationships with some incredible people on Twitter. I'm pretty lucky in a lot of ways. I've never really opened my Twitter follower stream vastly. I watch and listen to a lot of people on lists and stuff like that, but my actual followers. And so as a result, I haven't been inundated as much, although I've noticed some very specific differences. Yeah, I've moved a lot of my conversations over to the Fediverse on Mastodon. I'm Andy Mann at masto.ai if you want to catch me there. Look, Stu, I'm talking to more people on LinkedIn. I'm talking to more people on just random quick Zooms. I'm slacking more. There's a lot of different communication techniques I'm using, especially through the pandemic and working with my team, global team, work from wherever, whenever. So we're doing asynchronous communication. So we're recording a quick 3-minute video for each other in the middle of the night rather than calling a half-hour Zoom meeting. We're getting to the hub of the issue. This is a lot like Jeff Bezos would have, I think it was Jeff Bezos, would have the pre-read before he goes into a meeting. We would do pre-watch. So I think video is increasingly the most important mode of communication. You mentioned TikTok and stuff like that. Video is really important because this is how humans have always communicated. We've always communicated with body language, with expression, with our eyes. Video is actually especially when you can't be in a room with someone because you're working from home, you're working remote, you're working from wherever. So video, I think, is really important. Video doesn't replace in-person either. I think all of these companies who are mandating return to office are going to have a hard time, but collaboration is a contact sport. Innovation is a contact sport. You need to be with people sometimes. So I think the rise of the offsite will be more important than the rise of the back to office. I think these things are really important, the way that people work together. Set your own definitions for how you and your team work together. I've come across this so many times. People say, but I slacked you and you didn't answer. It's like I didn't know I had to. In my last team, their rule, and I adopted this, was awesome. I never scroll up on Slack. If it's important, you send me an email that sits in my inbox until I get to it. Having protocols you all agree with. I think there's lots and lots of media to communicate with. I think it's having the right idea about who you communicate with, where and how and why. Having those agreements actually with people, especially with your own teams, but also curating the people in your world so that you're putting energy into the people who are putting energy into you. And that's where I'm very lucky in my Mastodon and my Twitter feeds to have a lot of people who sustain me, who don't drain me.
That's awesome, Andi. Yeah, I totally agree. It's challenging. While I agree, having people need to come to the office doesn't make sense anymore most of the time, but nothing replaces getting the team together or some of those random collisions you can have from hallway conversations. So, we're always trying to figure out that balance of like, hey, how do you encourage that? Because if you also want to, you want to build team and you want to build relationships, if it's just, over the camera, you do lose something there. And Andi, like, will you write another book, do you think? Do people read the long form content anymore?
I will tell you, Stu, I've got one book. I've got 3 books in the hopper, and I don't know if they're worth finishing or even one of them worth starting because of the same reason. What is the audience? What do people really want to read? I'm looking at one concept around what the new CTO looks like. Right? I think the rise of the CTO and the CPO, the Chief Product Officer, even outside of Silicon Valley Industries, is a really interesting concept. And what does it mean to be a new CTO? So that was one area. I've got that in pretty chunky drafts. Look, I'm thinking about the idea of politics in IT and IT in politics. I think that's fascinating. Where you started with Cambridge Analytica in a lot of ways, but now we see such immense impact of technology into politics with big data and analytics. So that's an interesting one I've been toying with. Mate, the last one I've been playing with is a kid's book, a rhyming book that using rhyming couplets to describe the world of IT. A is for automation. So I don't know. I might write a book, but I'll tell you what. You mentioned my books. Private cloud. Goodness gracious me! It's not even 10 years ago that I was talking about using virtual machines, service catalogs, and process automation to build your own cloud-like environment on premises. Right? Where's that going? Is that if I write a book now, is it going to be as interesting, shall we say, as this one? I don't know. I think the video is a really important mode of communication. It continues to be critical. I think when we get AI building up compilations, and I worked on this a little bit in my last role at a video company, the idea of using AI and computer vision to understand what's in, say, this webcast. Imagine the idea that my team, members of my team could watch this, and then I could use that data to figure out which were the most interesting bits. Some of it gets creepy. It's like, which were the bits they actually watched rather than when they were looking away and maybe playing solitaire or something, doing email, right? You can do that. So I think communication over video is going to be really critical. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah. Well, Andi, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Lots of opportunity. Thanks for sharing. People, you mentioned already where to find you on Mastodon. We'll throw in the comments here, the Sageable website if people want to, find you there also. And yeah, pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for all the conversation. And hopefully we will find time to cross paths in person again in the not too distant future.
I would love to have another hallway conversation with you, actually in a hallway.
Yeah.
It's been great, Stu. I really appreciate it.
So glad we got to do this, Andi. And hey, audience, thank you so much for joining. As I mentioned, we've got KubeCon in 2 weeks. The next episode of this show will be on one of my favorite days of the year. It is May the 4th. And may the 4th be with you. And thank you for joining us on your journey in the clouds.